Well, hello, and thanks so much for joining our webinar, How to Select the Right Device Deployment Models in Healthcare. My name is Adam Mahmood, Product Marketing Manager of Healthcare, and I'm joined today by Michael Covington, our Vice President of Portfolio Strategy. So a brief look at our agenda. We'll start with a quick background on Jamf and give you an overview of our history and vision and purpose. Next, we'll give you a brief spotlight of how we help organizations manage, secure, and extend Apple solutions in healthcare. Next, Michael will cover strategic planning for technology transformation initiatives, ones that empower end users while also ensuring that organizations can trust the users and devices accessing their sensitive business data. And last but not least, we'll tie this all together and give you insights so you can select the right device deployment models for your needs. Whether leveraging your company-owned assets or your employees' personal ones, there are strategies for success. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Jamf, our mission is to help organizations succeed with Apple. We bridge the gap between what Apple creates and what organizations require. This is something that we've been laser focused on for more than 20 years. We have over 67,000 active customers, managing and securing over 28 million devices around the globe. Our active user community, Jamf Nation, has over 100,000 members and is growing. Now, when you think about who uses Jamf, well, we have organizations of every size and shape that you can think of. But some of the highlights: top technology companies as ranked by Fortune, some of the largest companies, some of the most valuable brands. And when we think of why, there are many reasons. One in particular I'd like to highlight is our history of same-day support for Apple operating system releases. For over a decade, we've been keeping up with Apple's new offerings, ones that come with features that users love and want to take advantage of. So at Jamf, we have same-day support for Apple's new releases to ensure that IT and security teams can certify these operating systems and deliver them out to users. Another really important reason why these customers have relied on Jamf is not just our product, but truly the whole experience and ecosystem that has been created around it. Now, all of this information gives you a picture of Jamf at a high level, but what does that mean for healthcare? Well, as far as who's using Jamf in healthcare, leading children's hospitals, leading adult hospitals in the US, and many other innovative institutions around the world are leveraging Jamf's solutions. And I'd love to highlight just one story that really paints the picture of what types of outcomes are being driven with Apple in healthcare. UC Health in Colorado, at the beginning of the pandemic, was faced with a challenge just like many communities. They needed to vaccinate as many people as possible. And so they worked with a number of entities in their community to stand up these mass vaccination clinics that you see here. Now, in the initial versions of these clinics, they had typical computer workstations on wheels, and clinical teams were documenting the vaccination workflows much like they would within the hospital setting. As you might imagine, there were a lot of challenges, and this led to delays within the documentation process. Now, through some quick innovation, the team was able to think different and take some of their mobile initiatives from different places in the hospital and apply it right here to this setting. And through changing to iPhone and Epic Rover as the primary tool being used by clinical staff, we saw a dramatic change. An 85% reduction in time to vaccinate a patient. Previously, what took 3 minutes was now down to only 30 seconds with this mobile change. What an amazing specific example. And as a result of this outcome, UC Health is standardizing on iPhone as the tool of care for all nursing staff moving forward. Now, we're so passionate about these capabilities in healthcare, and we created a little fun video to just pull together the spirit of Jamf's focus. And I want to roll it for you now. So if that's why we do what we do in healthcare and who we work with, well, what is it that we actually do? Jamf helps organizations manage, secure, and extend Apple in healthcare. So what does that mean at a high level if you break it down? Well, management has a number of core components that we'll highlight, and Michael will expand upon as we dig into the heart of our discussion. From the moment a device comes out of the box, Jamf can help deliver zero-touch deployment of configurations and baseline settings. This ensures that users are productive right away. Mobile device management at its core allows you to deliver consistent settings and configurations across the entire fleet. And having devices enrolled in mobile device management also allows you to have robust inventory, ensuring that you have eyes on all devices at all times. Management also helps you keep apps and operating systems up to date and secure. It's really important that apps are not only installed and managed and have the right settings around access, but that they have the right configurations to ease the user experience. Management also is about remote actions for IT teams. Giving IT the capability to remotely touch a device and update its settings ensures that users can get back up and running if there's an issue anytime and anywhere. And management with Jamf also brings another capability, self-service. Why require an IT admin to receive a ticket from an end user when an end user could access a form of an easy button to take care of a problem on their own? So what does that look like? Well, here's a Mac that's owned by an organization. And from the moment that it's turned on for the first time, it's remotely configured with everything needed. Here's a similar example, but a personally owned device. One where a user logs into their work account right from the settings app. And even though it's their own device and they have their personal footprint, there's a separate walled garden for their work information. Michael will expand on this here in a later part of our discussion. Regardless how devices are owned, well, we want to make sure that there's a quick way to open the App Store or a private App Store and get all of those resources that a user needs with just a few taps. And here we see that self-service application on both an iOS device as well as a Mac. Now, it's not just managing devices that we're focused on, it's also securing them. For some customers, a major pain point may be binding their Macs to Active Directory. Jamf can help you adopt modern identity and access workflows to tie users to their cloud identity instead. Many customers choose us for our best-in-class Apple endpoint protection, which also protects against threats that other solutions miss. Advanced machine learning unlocks robust zero-day threat prevention with automatic remediation workflows to protect users from things like phishing attacks and malicious domains, which can lead to costly data breaches. Many customers also want to enforce acceptable use policies and not just put it in writing. Jamf is able to provide robust content filtering across every app on every device. Now, work anywhere means users are suffering from the pains often associated with legacy VPNs. Jamf's Zero Trust Network Access solution is purpose-built for Apple. It's always on and never in the way, giving users a seamless and secure access to on-prem and cloud apps from anywhere. Of course, many organizations also need to validate that their endpoints are compliant and stay that way. Of course, this is true in healthcare. Jamf delivers deep insights at every level of the device, ensuring that you can mitigate risk associated with these compliance standards. So what does this look like? Here we see that same iOS device or macOS device and the Jamf Trust application, showing the end user the status of their device. And since Jamf is continuously managing and monitoring the security of these devices, any risk can immediately suspend access to sensitive work resources, whether that's an EHR application or a file share. IT and security can quickly investigate and evaluate the appropriate steps for remediation. So by bringing together management and security into a single solution, Jamf provides a new set of capabilities like never before. Now, beyond management and security, we extend Apple use cases in many unique ways. Of course, we tie into Apple's native services, have embraced the latest Microsoft technologies for single sign-on, integrate with Google and other providers for many different workflows relevant to patient and provider needs. Our API is leveraged by customers to customize their workflows, and our marketplace brings forward a number of app developers and integration partners to add even more value. But one thing I wanted to highlight briefly was our patented industry workflow solutions around patient experience, clinical communications, and telehealth. Over the years, we've developed unique Jamf Pro integrations that really make these workflows sing. In the case of patient experience, Healthcare Listener automates the management of iPadOS or tvOS devices used by patients in a hospital room. Jamf Setup and Jamf Reset are apps that simplify the provisioning and refresh process, bringing the power of device management down to a tap of the button for a user on a device. And Virtual Visits is a video conferencing automation that simplifies telehealth and ad hoc video encounters, making it super simple for a user to tap a few buttons and get connected to whom they need to. So put this all together, and we have an amazing platform for any healthcare organization that is exploring Apple, regardless the use case. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Michael.
Thanks, Adam. Let's go ahead and transition now and talk about some of the considerations that are really influencing strategic planning within organizations that are looking at future technology investments. As we look at the context that most businesses are facing today, it's really the reality of anywhere work. And this is really a new view of the modern workplace that started with digital transformation some years ago, was accelerated by some of the decisions that were made during the pandemic and subsequent lockdowns. And there's two key trends here that we are seeing continuing to have an influence over technology investments within many healthcare institutions. The first is the broad adoption of mobility. And this is not just mobile devices or mobile form factors. This is mobility as a use case, allowing individuals to get up from their desk and go and be productive at a place of their choice because the device is able to travel with them. The second big trend that we're looking at is the transition of applications out of the corporate data center. We're now seeing applications hyper-distributed. Not just do they live on-prem, but they've now moved into SaaS environments. They've also moved into both public and private cloud infrastructures. The important thing here in terms of applications and their hyper-distributed nature is that organizations in many cases have lost a centralized control point that allows them to provide consistent protection across those applications, but also to streamline access for individuals that need those tools to stay productive. So with that context setting, we wanted to take a step back and really look at the challenges involved with securing modern healthcare environments, really looking at the impact of the adoption of hybrid work and cloud compute and the new requirements that organizations are having to take a very close look at. The first key area that we see in the modernization of healthcare is really the adoption of modern devices. Here, we're seeing employee choice programs, the use of mobile devices, as well as the consideration of BYOD programs really bring new requirements into IT teams that are not only trying to figure out how they enable and empower individuals to take all of these new devices that are being introduced to the organization and pick them up and be productive, but also how they provide the appropriate level of security across all of these new and different device types, some of which have never been used by the organization before, so legacy tooling may not be appropriate for the new devices that are being brought in. The second big challenge is really about connecting users to those new devices, as well as to data that they access through those new devices. Historically, these modern platforms, even though they bring a great user experience along with them, they are disconnected from the user identity that is maintained in core business applications. What that means is that the user has historically had to sign in or log into the local device and then use a different set of credentials across applications that live in the cloud. This is really challenging for users, particularly as we look at this hyper-distributed nature of applications where their workflows are being significantly interrupted by having to plug in different credentials and adhere to different policies across device and applications. We want to be able to fix that. We want to make it so that we can streamline access and do it in a way so that it's more secure and less burdensome on the end user. Lastly, it's very, very important that we acknowledge that as new devices, new modes of operating are introduced and permitted by the organization, and new ways of interfacing with applications, that we have new threat vectors. It's really essential that organizations understand the use cases, that they document their acceptable use policies, and that they take inventory of the new threats that are going to be encountered so that they can build appropriate protections across all of their device types and workflows that their users are going to be adopting. It goes without saying here, but I really want to emphasize that for healthcare, the protection of patient health data and personally identifiable information is key. It's really essential to maintaining a solid brand reputation, and it's also important to just do the right thing for patients, for employees, for partners, for everyone associated with the institution. Now, these challenges are really the key considerations that many organizations are struggling with right now, but it's also really important as we look at the modernization of the workplace that we address these challenges in a way that continues to allow us to preserve this great, delightful user experience that modern devices are bringing to our employees, while also maintaining compliance. This is regulatory compliance, IT compliance, HR compliance. There's a lot of different considerations when it comes to policy that must be maintained even as we introduce these new ways of working. Now, at Jamf, we really strive to encourage our customers to embrace technology that allows their end users to have the same great experience in their work technology that they get in their home technology that they choose, while also ensuring that the devices that are utilized for work have the right trust so that the business can ensure that the access to sensitive data is being given only to authorized users on devices that the organization has a trusted relationship with. We call this trusted access. It's essentially an outcome-focused workflow that is really looking to bring together the best of management and security capabilities to not operate in silos, but instead to ensure that the organization is able to achieve the necessary outcome when these new devices are embraced by the business. And so really to kind of walk through the trusted access workflow, it begins with the establishment of a relationship with the device that will be used to access sensitive business data. We think that it's very critical that any device used to access an organization application be enrolled and essentially establish that relationship so that trust starts from the foundation. Now, it's not enough to just know what the devices are that are accessing business applications. We also need to know who is sitting at that device and that they are authorized to access those sensitive business applications and that incredibly sensitive data that sits behind them. So being able to take user identity and bind it to the device so that we can ensure that only authorized users on enrolled devices are able to connect is a critical aspect of trusted access. Now, trusted access does not stop with just looking at whether a device is sanctioned or not. We also must ensure that the device is free of threat and that it meets the organization's risk tolerances. And this really begins with making sure that the endpoint itself is protected. We want to ensure that the device maintains a healthy device hygiene, that it is free of malware, and that overall it is configured well to be operating in a world where there are adversaries that are working against the organization and trying to compromise not only individual users, but critical data that is held by the organization. Protecting the endpoint alone is not enough, however. We must make sure that we're looking at user-initiated risk. Anything that the user is able to change or download perhaps to the device, there is a level of threat prevention that essentially sits outside of the device and adds an additional layer of protection to ensure that the user isn't making a mistake or actually introducing some malicious content to the device. Now, trusted access is not a device-only workflow. It really does extend out beyond the device and into the applications that are key to the business. And from our perspective, this is really achieved using zero trust network access infrastructure, which ultimately takes all of the information that we've built up thus far, that the device is enrolled, that the user sitting at it is authorized to access the requested application, and that there is some measure or assessment of risk that meets the organization's acceptable tolerances. All of those things must be taken into account before access can be extended into those hyper-distributed applications that we talked about. ZTNA infrastructure is really the only modern solution that can allow a business to achieve this in a way that allows those modern devices to really perform. And to shine in terms of their overall user experience. Now, it's important to acknowledge that in the context of modern healthcare, things will go sideways. There will be times where users make a mistake in a configuration or an attacker is successful in compromising a device. We want to make sure that we have ways of mitigating these incidents and getting the user back to a productive state. It's here that we're able to take some actions and some remediation steps to ensure that security policy does not end in a block, but actually ends with a return to productivity. As you can see here, trusted access really does bring together the best of device management around functionality to identify and verify authorized users, and to really provide a robust set of functionality at the endpoint to ensure that the device is secure, and that we also have a really thorough understanding of risk in real-time environments as the device is accessing our most sensitive data. Now, it's great to put this gold standard, if you will, of trusted access out there and establish this as the strategic direction. But we did want to also show that it's possible to work toward the outcome of trusted access, and especially being focused on some of those early investment decisions, the technology that's going to deploy devices and configure them from the start. That needs to be part of your trusted access configuration and some of those strategic decisions that you'll be making in the short term. So as it relates to this, we really strongly believe that there is a roadmap to achieving trusted access. This is not something that needs to be activated all at once. You can actually drive towards the business outcome in a series of steps at your own pace. So this is something that your business can actually turn on as you're able to scale to support the different aspects of it. I really truly do believe that device management is the foundational component of trusted access. Really, device management needs to be inclusive of both company-owned and BYOD devices, and we need that kind of singular view of a device because that's where we're establishing trust with those endpoints that are accessing our most sensitive data sets. Management allows us to deliver essential configurations to the device to make sure that it can connect to local Wi-Fi, for example, that the applications the end user needs to be productive are available, etc. But management is also where we can perform some basic device hygiene checks. Make sure that the device is starting off in a good configuration, that it is not vulnerable in any particular way right from the start, and that when there are threats that are detected, that we're able to take some action and get that device back to a healthy state. As I mentioned, it's important to ensure that we're looking at this across all device types, not just company-owned. At Jamf, we do have solutions for BYOD that offer you some really powerful options that allow you to have confidence in the integrity of the applications that are being utilized from those BYOD devices, and also to implement some controls in a way that strikes the right balance between security and end user privacy. And I'll talk to you about that in just a bit more. The second important piece as we look at this roadmap of trusted access is don't just stop with managed devices. Enrolling a device and initiating that trust relationship is important, but we need to make sure that we have a real-time assessment of risk in those devices as they operate in the field or at your practitioner's desk or at the patient bedside. Endpoint protection and dedicated endpoint protection specifically here is going to provide us visibility into device health that is, I think, more alert and aware of real-time exploits that are currently being propagated. We're going to be able to really offer some protections against modern threat. This means that we're not just looking for threat and identifying it, but preventing it from impacting your devices in the first place, and that we're comprehensive in our perspective of security and protections, that we are looking across device configuration, across user-initiated risk, and across those outside-in styles of attack. And as I mentioned here, there are ways for us to strike that right balance between security and privacy. With some of the new technologies that are available from Apple, for example, we are able to offer and support dedicated work containers that have support of the operating system from underneath, and also offer the appropriate set of controls that the business feels comfortable with in terms of policies, but also that the end user is able to understand the privacy implications of those tools. Last but not least is really bringing in the identity component. It's important that we enroll devices. It's important that we build a very strong, resilient buffer around them to ensure that threats are not coming in. But we also need to know who the users are on their devices. This is really core to modern business, is bringing in the concept of user identity and user roles into our access decisions. It's really important that we start to enable a consistent adoption of identity technologies, not just across cloud applications, but across our devices and our core data stores as well. And that we do start to think about incorporating risk into access policies. It's not enough to know that the user is authorized. We must have a sense of how risky the device is that they're utilizing to access those sensitive business applications. And in the process here, we have opportunities really to minimize burdensome interactions that users have historically had to contend with. Multi-factor prompts, the use of very long passwords that have to be changed often. These are things that we're now able to address through technologies such as passkey and biometrics that are really being built into the core operating system and the hardware and exposed to applications in a way that the organization can have confidence in as they utilize that as part of their overall user identity verification process. So device enrollment, endpoint protection, identity and access. These are really the key pillars of trusted access that we want businesses to be thinking about in terms of their strategic planning and their establishment of a trusted foundation for modern healthcare. Now, as we start to wrap up, what I want to do is talk very crisply about the deployment technologies that many of you are considering as you look at these modern devices to come into your organization. And there's really three key flavors that we hear often about from customers. The first is the single user device that is organization owned. The second is the shared device. Again, organization owned, so you have the ability to really lock that device down and apply the appropriate policies on it. And then the BYOD program. I'll talk you through very briefly some of the things that we are thinking about as we empower devices or customers to embrace these new devices and really utilize them to their maximum in their organizations today. As we look at management functionality for single-user organization-owned devices, this is where we're able to leverage a lot of the technologies that have been in the market now for quite some time. We have automated zero-touch enrollment options, which enable a device to be configured and managed right out of shrink wrap. We have customization that can be done as that device is configured with pre-configured applications, but also we have options for self-service workflows that the user is able to really get in and personalize. And from a control perspective, of course, you have all of the MDM configurations and restrictions that are available when the company owns the device and is able to apply full management across that device. On the security side, really, I think the important thing to point out here is that our deployments typically take on device-centric policies. When the user signs into the device using single sign-on workflow with identity integrations that we offer right from the core sign-in screen, that user identity is going to be bound to the device, and that is then useful in access policies moving forward. On the endpoint protection side, a company-owned device is able to benefit from full device protection. That means you're able to constantly monitor the device and collect telemetry from it to ensure that it meets your organization's risk requirements. And then also you're able to apply full usage policies across the device for user-initiated risk. Because it is a company-owned device, you're able to determine what is going to be appropriate for your organization and implement the policies that you see fit on utilization of that device. Now, generally, a shared device looks and feels a lot like a single user device when they're both company owned. You have the ability to continue to utilize those zero-touch deployment models, which allow the device to be configured right out of shrink wrap. But when we look at a shared device, it's important to acknowledge that we bootstrap these devices with baseline configurations that are then customized based on the individual user when they are signing into the device. So with Jamf, we have some technologies that we call Jamf Setup and Reset that take that user sign in and really configure the device from that initial state so that it is ready for that user to be productive with all of their applications and configurations based on their user ID and their role. And then that carries down, of course, into our security controls. Everything here is really going to be fitting in with that sign-on process. So user identities will be cleared as the device goes from reset at the end of a shift to being set up when the next user signs in. So we have some ability to ensure that you have the appropriate reset on that local device in terms of the user identity and the assignment of permissions. But you continue to get the full device protection and telemetry collection coming from those devices. As we look to BYOD, this is where Jamf has really embraced new Apple technology that allows end users to self-enroll using built-in device settings. This is the account-driven user enrollment method that allows the end user to really be in control of enrolling their device and initializing that trust relationship with the device management service. A very, very different style of management, one that actually implements a user side, a personal side, and a work side of the operating system that essentially protects personal data from any kind of corporate oversight or tampering. Similarly, it protects the organization's data from data loss and any kind of tampering on the end user side as well. So some really powerful functionalities that come across now when we're able to leverage some of these more modern platform enhancements to offer these containers that separate the two different types of data and allow the different entities to have the confidence that their device, their data is not being tampered with or spied on, and that they have the appropriate controls over it moving forward. On the security side, what we're seeing here is that endpoint protection is now going to be limited to the work container, and that you get data loss prevention policies that span the work container into the personal container. So a lot of flexibility being exposed to organizations in order to give the user the confidence that their data and their privacy is being protected. Now, as Adam mentioned at the top, we have a number of different technologies in our portfolio that span device management, application management, and security, endpoint protection, mobile threat defense, safe internet browsing. All these technologies individually could certainly be adopted to enhance the management and security of a workforce. But when brought together under the context of a trusted access workflow, we really strongly believe that there's some really exciting opportunities here for businesses to really be making some informed strategic decisions about their future technology investments. And so with that, I will turn it back to Adam to take us into Q&A and the close. So thank you for the time.
Thanks so much, Michael. It's so exciting to hear you explain all of this. And to understand this outcome of trusted access, truly can be achieved regardless the choice of technology deployment scenario. With that, we'd love to open up for any additional questions that you may have. So please take a moment to submit those through the GoToWebinar system. And I will pause here and let you type those in. Well, if we don't have any other questions, we'll go ahead and close out for today. At Jamf, we create enterprise secure solutions that are consumer simple and protect the privacy of your users. It's not an easy task, but we're so proud of the work that we've done and that we'll continue to do for you in the future. If you'd like to learn more, please head over to jamf.com/healthcare, and we'd love to connect. Take care and have a great rest of your day.